Clay, people were, getting a little bit upset with me about my Vulcan obsession, about how the Vulcans of Enterprise don't line up with my expectations. My own subjective expectations are not being met by this show, and I'm holding it against it. But you've spent 3.5 long seasons every episode saying the Klingons don't look right.
This is correct.
This is not how the Klingons are supposed to look. They're supposed to have smooth heads.
That's how I open and close every episode.
Just like on personal communications outside of the show, I get text messages from you at 3 a.m. with a billiard ball, and you say, this is how the Klingons are supposed to look. What is this bumpiness? I can't stand it. I say, Clay, which is wait. 2 years from now, you're going to get an answer.
How am I supposed to know where the lights are positioned on the show if I can't see the reflection in their foreheads, is what I'm asking.
Is that why Picard is the greatest captain?
Yes.
Just because you can see the lights?
You know how difficult it is to light that head? That's a crack team they have working on that show. The best team in television.
A lot of powder.
The best team in syndicated TV.
Brandon, if I see another light reflecting off of Patrick's forehead, it's going to be the end of you and me. Anyway, you've been demanding being a canon hound like you are.
Yes.
Where's the explanation? Well, here it is. I hope you're happy.
So, am I to believe then, based on what they're postulating in this episode, that all of the TOS Klingons are like super Klingons?
Yes, and Scotty fighting them makes him a superhuman character to be able to fight them.
If that's where we end up, then I'm okay with that. Yeah, that's fine. If all of this is just...
This is the service of Doohan.
This is just retconning Scotty into some sort of superhuman athlete who definitely looks it through the entire run of his character.
No one who wears a weave that bad cannot be skilled in hand-to-hand combat like James Doohan. He was missing fingers or something, right? So I think they just wanted to pump up his stock a little bit. Yeah, I think he was in a war and he lost his fingers or something like that.
War.
Anyway.
You mean the war?
The
Wes.
war.
Technically the second war, but they still called it the war.
Anyway,
World War I doesn't even get respect when it comes to that. Everybody says the war, and they know what you're talking about. You mean World War II. Nobody says the war. Mm-hmm. They don't say the second war. I guess because all the people in the first
one. You say the Great
War
War for World War I,
That's
right?
true.
Yeah, I think if you add a great in the front of it, that becomes World War I.
Yeah.
Oh, damn it. I was going to hold up your book. It would have been a nice point to do it. Do you have a book sitting near you somewhere that you can hold it up?
Hold on.
Yeah,
I got a whole bunch of them on the floor over here.
This is
nice,
all in the service of the YouTube, but
in a nice tub that I dropped down my front stairs and exploded today. Here's my book.
Oh. There it is, everybody. We're a couple weeks into it being there, but we're operating in a time loop where time no longer matters, and so you're going to get your first look at it here on the podcast.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Page 3.
Page 3.
Chapter 3.
It's some nice action shot there for you.
And I saw it was on Amazon. You guys can buy it on Amazon. It looked like it was sold out on Amazon, though, so I don't know when the next batch are going to be there.
Nice to hear. And since we're timely and definitely not ahead of the curve, get it for Christmas, which I'm sure was like 3 weeks ago by the time this comes out.
No, I think there might be time.
Oh, okay.
I think there might be time. This might be 2 days before Christmas, but actually, you got to get out there.
If you do want to buy it, and it is sold out on Amazon, you can get it from awaveblueworld.com. I think that's their website. That's the publisher of the book, so they sell it directly from their site as well as on Amazon. So
there you go. The Great
War.
I
appreciate it.
And the great podcast can continue. So,
and for anybody listening who didn't see me hold the book up, it's called Bloody Hell.
Yeah. It does exist. It wasn't just a bit for the audio listeners. Affliction is a Nick Nolte film that stars Nick Nolte as a deeply troubled small-town cop who investigates a suspicious hunting death while other events jeopardize his sanity. A very good movie.
I was going to make the same joke, but I didn't know enough about Affliction to do it on the fly, so I'm glad you looked it up.
Affliction is the 15th episode of the 4th season of Star Trek Enterprise. It came out on February 18th, 2005. 1 of 2 in the Klingon Augment virus arc. 4 of 9 in the Augment arc. 1 of 4 in the Section 31 in the second century arc.
Boy. Oh, boy.
Teleplay to Mike Sussman. Story credit goes to Manny Cotto, directed by Michael Grossman, in Universe Date, November 27th, 2154. In this episode called Affliction, while Enterprise visits Earth for the launch of the Columbia, Phlox is kidnapped and forced to help the Klingons deal with a grave threat towards their species. Part 1 of 2.
I have one big question at the front. Why does 23rd century San Francisco look like 1950s Italy? That
22nd.
Sorry, whatever.
Like when they actually
year it is.
when they go
when Phlox and Hoshi are walking back from that restaurant, it looks like they're walking through the set of The Bicycle Thief.
I thought it looks I've only done resort trips to Mexico very rarely, but it looked like every restaurant row at a Mexican resort town that you go to. It's just a line of restaurants that you can eat all you want at their all you can eat buffet, and they get jumped by Rigelians just as you would in this episode.
Yes. When I first went to New York,
it's not a great look.
When I first went to New York, I had never had Indian food before. And so we went out. One of my classmates was a native New Yorker, so she knew where to go and all the places to go. And she brought us to this most amazing section of New York where it was an entire street that was just Indian restaurants that were like door to door on like 2 floors of every building, basically down the entire street. And each one of them had a guy standing outside who would basically carnival bark you into the restaurant. And it was kind of intimidating, but it was also kind of funny because like these guys are kind of competing with each other to get your business into their identical right next to each other Indian restaurants. And then as soon as you'd like walk past, they would just kind of turn to each other and like share a cigarette and talk for a while. So I figured they were all owned by the same people.
Indian food is my favorite food.
It's good.
I love Indian food. I think I could eat it every day. It's just so satisfying and so tasty. You feel so full after Indian food. It's wonderful.
You say that coming off of a serious stomach flu. That's brave of you.
I know that. Well, I'm fully healed now. I'm ready to go. I'm ready for the spiciest curry. Give me the spiciest korma. I'm a big pussy if that's the best I can do. I like korma though. Anyway, Affliction. How was I going to start this? I had a topic. Oh, the positive for this episode. Clay, this is the most complicated Enterprise episode I've ever seen in terms of structure of what's going on. I thought my big takeaway was, wow, they have a lot of different plot lines going. For a show that tends to sink or swim with one plot line in each episode, where you're like, this is the plot, it's either good or it's bad, and you kind of get off and you kind of go as the wind blows that way. I thought this was like 4 or 5 decently executed storylines that were all piled together. I think it's a good example of the sum of the parts is not greater than whatever it is. Like the sum of the parts is not. It doesn't really. All put together, this doesn't really line up to something that you think the individual parts would do. It does not exceed what the individual parts are. Poetry in motion. It's the stomach bug. It's this incredible amount of korma I've eaten. I thought it was complicated, and I thought it was uniquely structured for an Enterprise episode, where I don't think they've ever done this before, where there's so much going on with a bunch of different characters.
Yeah, it felt very modern, actually, in that way, because there was so much going on, and everybody did have something to do. Well, almost everybody. Mayweather didn't have anything to do, but pretty much everybody else had something to do. Yeah, it felt kind of modern in that it didn't have that traditional A plot, B plot kind of thing. I guess if you really wanted to get technical about it, I guess it does, because you've got the Phlox stuff is kind of the A plot, and then the Enterprise stuff is more of a B plot, and everything under that umbrella, I would say, counts. But you've also got the trip stuff happening on the Columbia, installing that sweet new
Section 31 with Malcolm.
Yeah, installing that sweet new lighting system that I hope responds to the bass on their stereo and the bridge there. That would be pretty sweet. But yeah, you get the Malcolm stuff. There's a lot going on. You've got the weird Matrix dream that T'Pol has with Trip that Hoshi also shows up for some reason. Yeah, I actually. So this will be an interesting conversation, because my takeaway was I really liked this episode. and I don't know if it's because I think it's really good or if it's because they tricked me a little by giving me so much stuff to do to like chew on.
Sure. That you were distracted by all the shiny parts and the flashing lights and everything like that. It's understandable. Well, here's my typical negative response here, where I also enjoy this episode, but I'm at a point where I'm really starting to think about how it's impossible for franchises to avoid this inflection point where they start to look inward more than outward at things. And this to me feels like a very key turning point in Star Trek where this felt like the most fan servicey inward gazing episode that Enterprise has done to this point. And it feels like the whole franchise will never recover from this afterwards through like Discovery and Picard, which have all become very self-referential, and they like to mix the shows together, and they just reference other things other people have done. In the recent series of Discovery, there's a space station called Jonathan Archer's Space Station or something, and it's like, okay, like we understand what's going on. I think.
Did you see how everybody stares at it though, with all that wonderment in their eyes? You can't fake that. That's not cynical.
You can't fake.
That's not a cynical, nostalgic money grab.
It's not.
That twinkle
I won't
is
hold
respect.
it against the show for
that
doing
twinkle
it.
in their eyes is respect, not dollar signs, Wes.
But I think why the Klingons have smooth heads in TOS is a bridge too far.
Is this the beginning of your stand-up routine? So I say, why do Klingons have smooth heads? Am I right? Everybody's asking the question.
Bunch of spoonhead Cardassians clapping in the background. I think this is the first time, and I've been feeling it in season 4. This is the first time where I'm like, this is not necessary to do. You don't have to do this.
Yeah.
This is, I understand the show's canceled. Everyone's like, let's just try to connect as many dots as we want. But I think that on a larger scale, outside of Enterprise just getting canceled and the writers trying to be like, let's make all the weird canon connections that we've been thinking about forever, what this more represents is the franchise doing this thing, which is kind of like a supernova of a star, where it starts to get sucked into itself, and all that it can pay attention to is its own details that already exist, and it can't expand outside of it.
Sure.
I think all big franchises hit a point where they do this for some reason. It's like inescapable.
Yeah.
And I don't think Star Trek has ever recovered. I don't think there's been a franchise that has ever recovered from this. I think once you start doing this, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This, to me, is maybe the keystone in the arc of Star Trek in that way, where this is the episode where the series now is only obsessed with what has been done to that point and how they can connect those dots to what they're doing now to just show that this is part of a larger tapestry.
Yeah. It's a weird pull for a storyline to do the forehead thing. Especially since the first time they show up when they storm the Enterprise, I thought for a second the Enterprise was getting raided by the Geico cavemen, because they do have that kind of look.
Well tanned.
Yes, yeah. Did you know one of those cavemen when they made? You know how they made the show, the Cavemen show? Did you know one of those cavemen was Nick Kroll?
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Wow.
Yeah.
In the ads too?
No, just the show. I believe. I don't think he was in the ads. I think he was just in the show. Yeah, or one of his early jobs. I think they actually make a joke. There's a reference to it in the newest season of Big Mouth, I think. Yeah, it's a weird pull, and like the rest of that story in and of itself, I found pretty interesting. Because
I like everything going on.
I loved all the Klingon medical stuff. I loved, because that's something you've never seen before. I've never seen what Klingon sickbay is like. I've never seen how medical ethics blend with Klingon honor culture. And I mean, you've got the guy right there being like, I'm throwing honor out the door if it means I can save more lives, but I'll also kill this guy because it will be an honorable death. You know, one of those guys was Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince.
It looked like him. Yeah. The general
Yes,
guy,
yeah.
the head guy who kills him. Yeah, I like the executing the patients who, Phlox thinks he's going to do an autopsy, and they're like, he's not dead yet, and they kill him, and it's like, well, now he's dead. I also like the when they don't have Phlox wants them to contact to that planet or base to get the database about the viruses, and he's like, I just stole it. It's like that's like it's a very Klingon approach.
Yeah.
He's still clearly a scientist, but he's a Klingon scientist.
Even the catalyst for everything when they kidnap Phlox, and he's like, why didn't you just ask for help? And he's like, I can't ask for help. You kidding me? Our entire culture would collapse if I asked for help. But yeah, I really liked all that stuff. I mean, I even liked the using of the augment DNA thing. Because I thought it was an interesting way to use that plot point, and I mean the Klingons trying to build super soldiers based on technology or DNA's whatever that they don't understand is an interesting plot point, and side effects from that they don't count on is really interesting. I guess it's weird because I feel like on the one hand, what the hell? Let's do the smoothing head thing. No one's ever touched on it. Let's just throw it in there as an explanation as to what happens, one of the side effects from this stuff, because it's there and it services our story. But on the other hand, yeah, it's a pretty deep pull to throw in just for the sake of tying up a loose end. So I don't know. I guess your mileage will vary on whether or not that bothers you. I honestly don't know where I stand on it because it doesn't, I don't think it really bothers me that much. Like but at the same time, I do totally agree with what you're saying, where now that they've started doing this for the franchise, it does just keep slipping down into, all right, have we pushed this as far as people are willing to take it? Do we now have to start digging things up that we've already put to rest, I mean, I know they do that to quite a serious degree in the series finale, and then after that you've got the next thing after Enterprise is the 2009 reboot, right, which is all remember Star Trek in the 60s, and then your Discoveries,
but what if different, right?
What if different, and you've got your Discoveries and your Picards, which are really leaning into that. Well, Discovery's a weird beast because I would say Picard leans into it more actually than Discovery does, but Discovery leans into it in really like weird ways that we talked about that for 3 seasons. We don't need to talk about it anymore.
But those I would think those series are extremely they do not exist on their own. They are stuck.
Yes.
Like they are not, we haven't done Voyager yet, but they're not Voyager. Like Voyager's in a totally different place with totally different aliens, and it's like we don't know anything that's about this area. It's kind of, it's brave in a way that the modern series aren't, because the Voyager, for instance, just totally separates itself. You have to make up new aliens, you have to make up new races that they're going to run into out there and everything. Eventually they bring back the Borg or whatever, but Discovery and Picard strongly rely on referencing things that have already come before. And I almost wouldn't mind the Klingon arc in this one, but they also like pile in Section 31 into it as well. It's like, so you're getting a lot of stuff that you're like, oh boy, this is a lot of references that we're going to start.
Section 31, who has not changed their uniform in like 200 years or whatever it is.
No,
still,
it's the Sloan uniform.
Still a slick,
it's effective.
Slick black rubber leather thing that you can, slaughter a hog with after you do some.
It's a butcher's apron made out of rubber. That's exactly what it is. It's kind of that, like, I can maybe get away with just the Klingon stuff, and you kind of go, this is not really necessary, but it's a small plot point and otherwise. But I feel this episode is just kind of dripping with self-references.
I think it's the combination, honestly. If it was just the forehead thing, probably fine, because like I said, they kind of use it in an interesting way that services the story, that this new story they're telling. But the Section 31 thing, honestly, that's a bridge too far for me, I think. Because they've come up before, right?
On this show?
Oh, they haven't.
This is the first time.
Thank you. Okay, that's good, because I was like, Malcolm's part of Section 30. I don't remember that episode.
No, that's definitely never happened.
Okay.
This is a whole cloth creation.
Then that makes me like it even less.
Okay.
Because Section 31 is such a Deep Space Nine thing that even the fact that they didn't even bother to change the look of it, despite its 200 years in the past or however many, I don't know how many years it's supposed to be.
Yep.
But it's just like, that seems a lot more fan servicey to me than the forehead thing.
Yes.
However, that being said, I do like the Malcolm stuff in this episode. It's like, I find it engaging, but it does feel very convoluted and kind of like forced into the plot to all of a sudden make him a Section 31 sleeper agent who has to. I'm not even sure. Can you tell me? I'm sorry, I don't remember why he can't tell, why they're trying to keep the Klingon thing a secret from Archer.
I think he's just under orders to not let Archer know about what it is, because Malcolm knows about the virus at the end. He knows like what is ultimately going on. So Section 31 has some sort of ulterior motive where they can't let Archer know because Archer won't go play ball with what they want to do, basically.
Yeah. Meh. I don't know about that, but
I mean, the difference to me is that Section 31 is really interesting because you can see every other series after DS9 is like, I love Section 31. Right. I think I want to do something with it, and no one can do anything with it.
It's like Section 31 is to Deep Space Nine what the Borg was to TNG. It's like the one really new original idea that everybody loved, so everybody wants to use it, but nobody really knows how to use it outside of that show.
Right. And I think it sticks out here where I don't really understand a purpose for Section 31 in this era of Star Trek, because I don't know how Section 31 would control anything when there's one ship flying around.
Yeah,
like,
as soon as that guy showed up, I was, again, much like last episode when Trip asks for a transfer, I was like, transfer to where? This guy shows up and I'm like, who? Starfleet has like 8 people working for it. Why do they need a Section 31 at this point? You know, I mean, like if you wanted to lay the groundwork for Section 31, especially coming off of the Xindi conflict, that would make sense to me. Like if there was some sort of fledgling version that was a result of what happened with the Xindi,
a political group,
yeah,
like that sort of because they've been laying the groundwork with the anti-alien sentiments on Earth too,
right?
With the attack on Phlox and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so you have this, especially. I mean, I feel like they kind of missed a layup here in the 9/11 allegory. If you've got a Section 31 that's operating and sort of like the CIA and stuff involving the Patriot Act post 9/11, then I think you've got something interesting as to what you're doing, and you can see how this is sort of being born out of this conflict and these fears that the people of Earth have. But Section 31 in this is just fully formed. They're ready to go to the Kraftwerk show, and they're bringing Malcolm with them.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't think it works in Enterprise. What's interesting is that I do think, like as you were saying, on the other hand, the Klingon augment arc works pretty well for an Enterprise story. Yeah. It feels like it's a story that both works within Enterprise from what they've done previously because of the nice tie-in that they have to the human augment arc, and how it's kind of an interspecies arms race where the Klingons are like, well, we can't fight an army full of these guys, so we need to have these guys on. We need to be a part of this as well. I like that. Section 31 does feel ham-fisted and terrible and unnecessary in this. It's interesting, like they just keep trying to shove them into shows that don't need it. But to me, it's before we go into like the other storylines, I guess, do you just want to comment a little bit, because I've said my frustrations with it, where this inward-looking thing, I think it's really a problem. I think I think it's a response to fan stuff too. I think fans wanted this and demanded it. And the original creators of franchises have kind of a strong enough idea where they don't want to do what the fans are saying because they're like, I already have an idea, I'm going to do something. But after a while, you run out of ideas. And then you're like, well, what do the fans think? Sure. What should I give these people? And I feel that's what they're they're getting here, because I was just looking at the Facts on Memory Alpha. Apparently there was a big, on the online Trek bulletin boards and stuff, people were constantly harping on the fact that the Klingons don't look right for this era,
Sure.
that they should not be this way. And I have to think after a while, you're just like, fuck it, I'll just answer this question for these guys. But it's, I don't think you can, is it possible for a franchise to escape this circle of being sucked down this drain of like, well, let's just constantly, in order to appease people who've already seen this, reference things that have already happened?
I think first of all, I think it's interesting because this is, in the grand scheme of things, kind of the first franchise to really fall into that trap, wouldn't you say? Like, this is, I think it stands out.
Star Wars does it around the same.
Well, but
I would say Star Wars.
Star Wars was doing new stuff. Like, well, except for the third movie. I feel like maybe Star Wars ended up doing more of it because they were doing new stuff that people weren't ready for or didn't appreciate. Not to say that I enjoy the new stuff, but like I'm not the first person to say this, but say what you want about the quality of the Star Wars prequels. It's George Lucas telling the story George Lucas wants to tell. It's not how do we get all the Star Wars fans to point at the screen and go, oh, I know what that is. But yeah, you've got it's these longer running franchises that at the time anyway are, the fan bases are kind of starving for these little bits of connective tissue. Star Trek is a little tough act because it's been on so consistently for like 20 years or something at this point, or 15 years. Mm-hmm.
I think it's I think it's something that needs, I guess I would say that Star Wars is part of it, because I think it's something that needs, in between the brand releases, you have this sort of fan cult of writing that creates a universe that exists outside of what's actually there on the screen for you. So, and then there becomes this rub of conflict between, well, this is already sort of canon that we've established because fans have been writing about this for so long that the movies have to respect, or the TV shows have to respect it because fans have this now in their head that this is the way. I think that's the connection between them, because Star Wars has that background and Star Trek has that background too.
But, I also wonder, it's tough because Star Wars was so egregious when they started doing that. Like, Episode 3 ends almost as close as you could to the beginning of Episode 4 without Rogue One in the middle. But I wonder if this stands out to us so much now because it's so common. Like, all of the franchises do this stuff now, where at the time, you had been pushing everything forward so much that taking a second to like link a couple things back probably seemed kind of exciting and novel in the moment. But modern.
So I guess the problem is you can't escape it. I would agree with that too, where this was probably novel at the time they were doing it, where franchise were starting to semi-reboot themselves. And they were like, well, it'll be kind of cute to just tie this in and show that there's a connection. But I don't think that the franchise, once they start doing it, is capable of escaping that pull anymore. Yeah. I think that it becomes like an acceptable, or it becomes a key part of the DNA of a series to have some kind of connection to previous stuff. And all it does is just makes the universe seem small and inconsequential.
I think it's nice when it's done right, but I do think, unfortunately, you can get overwhelmed by it creatively and it just bogs you down. For instance, Doctor Who, when they brought Doctor Who back, was a continuation of the story, but they went a very long time before they started like explicitly mentioning stuff that from the original run. And they kind of culminated all that stuff with this big 50th anniversary show where they touched on everything. Like, they really touched on stuff. And it was great. I thought it was a great episode. But since then, it's gone more and more back to that well, and more kind of like retconning old things in order to tell new stories. And you just kind of leave your, scratching your head going like, what? Wait, why are we going back to the beginning when this show is always about moving forward? And I think with something like Star Trek, that's the problem as well, because Star Trek is by definition a show about moving forward. And so the minute you start rooting your show in the past, you kind of lock yourself up. And yeah, I think franchises are kind of doomed to get there, because the ones that become very popular get popular for a reason, right? And there's a certain amount of iconography that is the stuff everybody loves. And so if you're going to go back and tell new stories in that world, you're going to bring that iconography with you. Like, even for me, Star Trek, I love the Star Trek look of stuff. So when they change the Delta so it doesn't look like the badge anymore, it kind of bums me out. Or when they change the ships so they don't look like quote-unquote Star Trek ships, kind of bums me out. It makes me kind of less interested. But I think there's a line you can walk where you can do that stuff without being a slave to references for the sake of references, just because you've been overwhelmed by the wave.
So how,
I don't know if that really answers your question, but
it does. But before we get into the second parts of the plots here, because there's a lot of plots, and I don't think we're going to spend a tremendous amount of time on each of them. What do you briefly feel about Enterprise's fourth season in that context? Like, is Enterprise's fourth season a noble attempt, a bad attempt, a noble failure? Is this like, in and of itself, is what they were doing something that's worthwhile?
I feel like all three of those choices are bad. It's like when the WWE lets the fans choose the match, and it's like a street fight, a no holds barred match, or a anything goes match. It's like, all right, well, this is only one match with three different names.
Well, is this the best episode of TV and best season you've ever seen, Clay, or is this somewhere less?
I'm a little bit bummed out by it, because this show kind of managed to avoid doing a lot of that stuff, and now this fourth season really feels like they're going to the mat pretty hard. And they're going to the mat to fill in cracks that I don't think anybody really needed filled in. I mean, maybe they did. I mean, if they were complaining about the foreheads on the message boards,
just online sure, voices.
I mean, I'm kind of agree with what you said. It's like, at this point, it's the last season. Let's just fucking do it, and so people will be happy. And
that's the saving grace, kind of like it's that does change the alchemy that comes into this. I say it just as the last thing before we move into the plots that are not really serial, or not really doing what we're complaining about here. But this was the first episode this season where I both felt tired of the references and tired of multi-part episodes.
Sure. Yeah.
I hadn't really felt that before, but when we got to the end of this one, I was just like, I even like the ending. I think that the ending of like hooking the warp core up so that it can't shut down and then just having to go incredibly fast while Archer's on an elevator looking nervous is kind of a funny way to end the episode. But I think I'm a little tired of 2 and 3 part episodes in a single season of Star Trek, so many of them, because they don't really, I don't know. It's hard to say. I kind of like the standalone nature that the episodes allow, and we've had some good ones in this episode, like Observer Effect and stuff. And when they start to stretch out arcs in a way that they're doing here, I feel like I'm starting to see why this was done for budgetary reasons and not creative reasons as the main driver of what they're doing. Because after a while, it just feels like they're kind of just telling a story slower than they normally would.
Right.
And that's where it is.
In comic books, we call that decompressed storytelling, which is something that's been on the upswing for the past 20 years or so.
Yeah, because there's a profit balance to be made there, where you need to, where you're as Enterprise is doing, you're balancing a budget against what you can actually do, and this is the outcome that they've come up with.
Yeah, it's the multi-part episodes are starting to drag for me too a bit. I'm glad this is only a 2-parter, because I think doing 2 triples back to back is it's hard in ice skating. It's hard in watching Star Trek Enterprise. But yeah, it's strange, because you pulled out the forehead thing specifically as kind of like a bridge too far for you, and honestly, I mind that less than some of the other stuff they've done. Like, I think I mind that less than their run-in with the Ferengi or any of the other things they've done where they have to basically Armin Tamzarian it and be like, let's just never talk about this ever again because it in canon world we haven't discovered this yet or some shit or whatever. Like this one,
I like this better than the Vulcan arc. People love the Vulcan arc. I think this is, as this episode is, this is a better thing for Enterprise to do than the Vulcan arc.
Yeah,
was.
I totally agree. I think this is much better than the Vulcan pointy thing and all the stuff surrounding that and what I think because the difference is, and I think this is where your tie-ins and your quote-unquote fan service, if you want to call that, what the distinction is. In this one, the explanation of the smooth-headed Klingons is in service of this new story that they're telling. In the Vulcan arc, all that stuff, the entire story is in service of tying up stuff or lining things up with previous shows. In which case,
yes,
that's not gonna get it done. I don't like that. But in this one, but they do it again, as I mentioned, they do it both ways in this episode, because as much as I like the Vulcan, the smooth-headed Klingon stuff, I hate the Section 31 stuff for the same reason. Like, there's no reason Section 31 needs to be in this, other than the fact that you can point at it. And, you say no one's ever done it, but we haven't seen that new show yet. And I've got a faith that new show that's definitely going to happen, even though it was announced 3 years ago, and no...
They were waiting for Michelle Yeoh to get written off of Discovery, and she's gone.
Yeah,
now.
And
she's
then
gone.
a pandemic happened, and I'm sure the fire is still there for everybody. Ash Tyler's just been waiting by the phone, not taking any other jobs, hoping that show comes through. Like that, I that stuff is when I don't like it. Is when it's not in when your story is in service of the references and not the references in service of your story.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that I like the Klingon arc too. We'll probably have more to talk about it next week when we get to the second part of it. But I agree with you. Like, the strength of it, I think, is the Klingon scientist is a really novel thing. I like that. Like, the Klingon scientist is more illuminating of Klingon society than anything that happened in the Vulcan 3-part arc.
Oh, totally. 100%.
It's like, it's like, wow, the pieces just fell into place. The minute that guy starts talking, you're like, oh my God, this makes complete sense that this would be the kind of guy who both will willingly kill people and has a Klingon sense of honor, but is also like, I'm trying to figure out some science, guys. So I need to do this as well.
I wish they introduced this guy 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, I know.
And he had become a recurring character who just every now and then kidnaps Phlox.
It's neat. So let's get to the other parts of this. Trip on the Columbia. Was Trip ever this much of a hard ass?
I don't think so.
Time on the Enterprise?
I mean, Seth MacFarlane
know
looks
what
like
this
he's a bit
is.
of a slacker, so someone's got to kick that guy in the ass. I've
He's
seen
a little
I've
go
seen
face.
him as a captain.
It's hard. McFarlane's voice is so iconic that it's hard not to read even straight lines of like, I've realigned the warp core as a joke. I hear his character say it, and it's just like, oh, he's trying to be funny. This is a funny guy. What'd you think of the Columbia stuff? We did not get a scene which definitively proves whether or not one of us was right in the last episode where Archer's talking at the end.
Correct.
We get no information about whether or not that's the case.
Well,
but
on
what do
the
you
other
think of
hand,
Columbia?
what we do get is a scene that I think you can only read one way, which is the captain of the Columbia asking Trip why he left the Enterprise. And basically, I was waiting for, after the explanation of like, I think I got to serve with colleagues and not friends. I was hoping she was going to be like, so we're not going to fuck?
She just puts out the candle.
Yeah, like, because it was kind of there was a little bit of like tension there where she was like seeing what was going on just in case she wanted to touch butts a little bit.
That captain role is interesting. The performance is interesting. She's really playing it as if she's trying to read. without any line from script, it really comes across as she's trying to figure out why Trip is here. Mm-hmm. Why did he come here? And I think that that's smart. I think that's the right thing to do because, as we talked about last episode, I don't know why Trip is there. I think more people on the thing should be like, why the hell are you here? Like, what's going on with this? I don't really know what else is going on in the Columbia outside of that. I don't think there's anything maybe worth mentioning. Trip and him are having a connection in the apple of the heaven, the apple desk of the heaven world or something. Anything else about Columbia there? Is that pretty
Well, I
much
just
it?
wish there was the second space starship had been called the USS Downeaster Alexa, so we could really know that Billy Joel has taken his place among the cultural pantheon of the entire world. It's interesting. I don't think you really get enough of that to really kind of sink your teeth into it, but I do like it if they're gonna be doing this weird mind meld dream thing with T'Pol, because you do see him trying to put that stuff out of mind and being dragged back into it and stuff. So I'm kind of interested where they're going there, and if Hoshi brought a camera with her.
He's got to be back on the Enterprise by the end of the next episode.
I would
right?
assume so. Yeah.
The Columbia's. I'm just making a random guess. The Columbia's got to be sent after Enterprise. I would think.
Probably.
I think it has to serve as like the rescue ship or something. But I don't see him staying off Enterprise for longer than that. And I don't know if, for how little he's going to be off the ship, I don't know if they're really using the time off the ship effectively enough. Well, we'll see in the second episode if anything changes.
You say he hasn't been that much of a hard ass before. He didn't seem like he was being that much of a hard ass, and he still had 4 people ask for transfers. It's like, what is he doing down there?
Well,
he's been there for 2 days.
I guess that's my point. Like, either these guys are incredibly soft, but it struck me as funny because the Enterprise is not this hard-nosed military command ship.
Right.
Like, Archer's high-fiving people is like, hey, you guys, we're having a good time out here in space. And Trip just comes off and he's like, you lollygagging motherfuckers. Like, what kind of warp engine is this? And they're just taken aback and they all chicken out and want to leave and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't know what it was, whether or not that was, whether or not it'll be interesting or not by the time that it wraps up. What's the last plot line? Is there a last plot line, or if we just give short shrift to something?
I think that was it, right? The Phlox virus thing. The Columbia stuff.
Malcolm in 21, or Section 31. The smooth-headed Klingons make an appearance.
Yep. Malcolm and...
Do you want to just talk about the ending, I guess,
Sure.
quickly, where the Klingons board and they put this virus on the ship that makes the ship go fast? As I said before, I liked it. I thought that was an effective ending to an episode.
Hopefully someone asks Archer a pop quiz in the next episode.
Yeah, I know. Just he can't take his foot off the accelerator and find a highway where he can just drive around forever. Maybe there's not much else to say about that, really.
I thought it was an odd place to end the episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. I don't think it was bad or anything. It just was very abrupt, and watching Mayweather like turn the juice up on the warp drive isn't exactly long camera spin around onto Riker's face saying fire. But I think it worked okay.
Yeah, I guess it worked for me because I felt there was a palpable tension of just the ship going too fast, and like what do you do when the ship just can't slow down? Kind of, I thought that it was effective enough at making me feel like there was some kind of danger going there. It was better than the usual chase sequence ending that Enterprise will tend to do. So that's it. Is there any other? Unless you thought that you wanted to have do something else about one of those subplots, I guess that's kind of it. I mean, there's not much to say about Section 31. We talked about the Klingons, we talked about Trip and T'Pol and all that stuff.
Well,
do you have anything else, or is that
regarding the Trip and T'Pol stuff? Do you think this is going to be the thing that gets them back together? Is this mind meld thing, or what are your feelings about this shared dream space they seem to have?
Sure. And first point before we get there, really quick. Not crazy that Archer teaches T'Pol how to mind meld. I don't think
that was another instance where this felt very modern, because that feels like something Michael Burnham literally does that last season when they go to the Trill pool and she's like, don't worry, I can do this better than the Trills can, just watch me do it.
Just let me float. That's true. And I mean,
Archer's gonna mansplain mind melding to an actual fucking Vulcan.
It's really tough because he did have Surak in him. I think what's weird about it is that it's so throwaway. Like, you don't see him teach her anything. He just goes, I'll teach you how to do it. And then it cuts to her doing it with Hoshi. So it's
He
strange.
essentially says to Paul, relax a little bit. And that's about
just
it.
relax. Just take it easy. Why don't you smile a little bit more?
Yeah.
What did you ask me about Trip and 12? If this is going to be the way that they get back together?
Yeah, what are you seeing coming from this shared dream space thing?
I just don't think it's... Well, it was interesting to me because it doesn't really highlight anything that they don't know about each other. Mm-hmm. So there's not this... It wasn't a mind meld where T'Pol realized the depths of Trip's feelings for her, or there was some sort of opening into his mind that she was previously unaware of. Both of those characters know exactly what's going on in relationship to each other. Yeah. You know, so I don't know what's holding them apart at this point. It's, as far as I can tell, it was T'Pol's interesting herself in the Kashara. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that's preventing them from being together, right? Is there anything else outside of that? In professional standards, I guess, in the workplace?
Yeah, I guess that's about it.
Is that good enough to really overcome and cause them to be together? I just don't know what the scene where they decide to be together is going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost kind of feel like the decision to be together has to be as paperworky as the decision to not be together. So they're like, okay,
sure.
So
they just got to shake hands.
I guess we're going to do this. You and I are officially together, and I look forward to working with you.
Yeah. Or it's just like, I just picture it's the ending scene of some episode where T'Pol brings in like a cardboard box and he's like, you can put it over there. And then the camera just cuts to black. You know, it's like they've moved in together, but it's extremely low energy.
They do that thing. They do the thing where they both agree to be together, and then they sit down and both stare forward, and then Sound of Silence starts playing as the bus starts pulling away. Yeah. Well, what do you think the explanation is for as to why this space exists? Did they? I'm showing my ignorance, obviously, and my bad memory. Did they have some sort of intense mind meld, the two of them?
I don't think they've mind melded. No,
well, I mean,
I think
who
it's
knows
just
what's going on.
Right,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. I think it's just supposed to represent the strength of their emotional bond.
Sure,
it's that they just have something that they can see each other, and it's so powerful that Hoshi will get sucked into it, and then Hoshi starts getting excited too about what's going on in this dream space.
The two of you were there, and honestly, I was kind of into it. No, I'll be honest. When that dream thing happened, I got like intense flashbacks to when I was a kid reading the X-Men comics, because I thought like the most romantic fucking thing in the world was how Scott Summers and Jean Grey had a psychic rapport, so they were always connected to each other's brains. And that was like the big connecting thing for those two, and it was always the thing. It's like, oh, these characters, blah 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 blah, but Gene and Scott, they have a psychic rapport. They're like soulmates or whatever. And then when that broke, it was a big deal. So that was the first thing I thought of when I saw this.
Doesn't really have that power here, unfortunately. I don't think.
No.
How do you think they get together? I mean, I guess semi-seriously, like, what would they say to each other? Just, this has been the way it needs to be. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's got to be. Do they even say anything, or do they just like start making out? Like, what can you possibly say other than, I guess let's just do it.
Let's just do this. Let's just do this thing.
Prepare.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Prepare your mouth for tongue dock, baby.
We're kind of assuming that they do get together.
That's true. They might not. They might actually just never get together, which honestly, I'd be kind of impressed if they did.
Wow,
that.
just like a season and a half of blue balls from the show. That is remarkable. We'll see. We'll see what they say. Anyway, I guess that's it. I don't have anything else to say about this. You've expressed your disappointment in Section 31. I would agree with that. I talked about how it's a weird move for a franchise to do. We'll see if the franchise can recover from this, but that's further down the line. I guess that's it. We'll wrap it up. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening today to the show. If you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/thepensky-file. It's the best way to support us. A couple dollars a month, you get extra stuff, get extra podcasts. There's like 100 plus of them now you can listen to, a bunch of sci-fi topics, horror topics. Clay and Amanda run through all the Friday the 13th films for the past year. They're going to be doing something else coming up next year. We have polls that you can vote on to decide what we cover. You get access to the special captain room on the Discord. Join our Discord as well if you're interested in communicating and having Star Trek and other etc. related conversations. You can go to the Discord. I guess that's it. Thank you very much, patrons. And as always, our captain tier get a special shout out. I say special thanks go to Samuel Custer, Tark, Latif, Joint Mango, Andrew Sherlock, Cal Barrett, Mike Burnett, Matthew Ross, Christian Pouch, Brendan Howells, Matt Cutler, Michael Pond, Nick Sergey, Grim Santo, Sean Bradley Killens, Dwayne Hackett, Vol 13 Hero, Darth Mosk, Kevin Reyes, Jordan Cooper, Russell Owes, Stephen Minton, HH28, Jake Zajac, Paul Roscoe, Jig123, Poindexter G, Patrick Siebert, Nick the Rat, Dave Davies, Garple John Zorn, Captain Brazen, Eric Sanchuan, Jake Keys Gamer, Kevin Lowry, William Seisler, Rayhan Jaffer, Soylent Blue, Zane Majors, Olivier Pardeur, Retail, Disbrod, Tom Hickey, Ed Mark Starr, Jose Hunter, ZWNF Remixes, Captain Munchausen, James McLennan, Beal, Jonas, Tommy Tango. Second page says, Tuvix Must Die, Chris McLaughlin, and Chase Jackson. Thank you very much, everybody, for supporting the show. Now we'll go to Patreon Thoughts. There's only 4 of them, and we have such a backlog that saying people should write more comments on the Patreon will probably not happen until the finale has been recorded, so we'll see what we get. Kyle Barrett says, Affliction. I feel this is the episode that takes Season 4's penchant for canon-connecting fan service too far because basing a two-parter around why TOS Klingons look different is unnecessary. I don't need an in-universe explanation for every makeup change, but while the core story is flawed, I enjoy most of what's orbiting it. Malcolm, as well as being closeted emotionally, now has a secret he feels he can't tell anyone, which only adds to the gay theory. But I'm glad the writers are doing something with the character, and seeing this level of conflict between crew members, however out of the blue, is refreshing. Trip runs his crew like a video game developer trying to meet a release date, and it must have been hard for Seth MacFarlane filming his scenes in proper Star Trek with a constant raging erection. Hoshi is the MVP of the episode, looking peng in that turtleneck leather jacket combo, maybe the best regular clothes in Star Trek. 3 out of 5. I don't know if peng is some sort of British euphemism or if he's bringing up that tennis player in China who's been disappeared, but thank you, Kyle, for your comment.
I don't know. I'm not up on that news, but I find that funny regardless.
It is a tragedy. The Chinese Communist Party is a terrible, terrible organization. Let's go to the next comment. Matt Ross says, Affliction, continuing the apology tour for the missteps of certain writers and producers. We get the smooth forehead explanation story, which neatly fits into the mold of wrapping up questions of every minutia of Star Trek, something that Enterprise should have originally explored, and what happens when a fan who knows the show and lore has a clue. Again, that damn opening theme song after some body horror, terrible. A Proto-Section 31 group emerges, arguably a weak point on this arc. I also wonder if there was supposed to be something more when Starfleet Security's Bob Cut investigator shows up, but no. Trip's transfer was again so contrived it hurt. I just don't understand the logic either, like Archer's sudden mind meld hints and the Jedi connection with T'Pol. I also don't understand the extra light bars on the Columbia's bridge, last seen in E2. Other than being annoying, are they there to tell dumb viewers that this is a different ship? 3 bumpy heads out of 5.
Well, after the last 3-parter and that Daft Punk pilot that ship had, this time we've got stage lighting on the bridge of the Columbia. I think someone in the art department is just really into mid-2000s techno and has been going to see like Danger Mouse concerts or something and just getting really... Is he around yet at this point? He might not be around.
I think he might be. Maybe he's just on the French underground scene or something at that point. Is the Columbia Bridge design too much for a constant bridge? Like if the Enterprise bridge looked like that, is it too much?
Probably. I mean, the only real difference is those lights, right?
There's the lights in the back, and there's like poles and stuff that are in the foreground. There's like computer panels on poles that are next to the consoles.
The lights seem like they would probably be a lot. I think you need to dim them down a bit in order for them to not just be a big focus.
I kind of liked them. I think I like the design of the Columbia Bridge. I don't mind it, and in a canon sense, I do like that they're making a lot of progress between each ship of the same type.
Yeah, I like that too.
I think that makes sense.
I think I've mentioned this on a previous show, but I'm really reaping what I sowed, or I guess it's a karma thing with all my hate and distasteful comments I've made about the theme song for this show, because Amazon does not let me skip the song.
No, it gives me a 10-second skip. It's like
skip.
You're going to enjoy this.
It gives you, first the skip button takes a couple seconds to show up. Like, when you're watching TV and like someone just kind of picks the remote up but doesn't change the channel, just in case people want to say don't change the channel. And then when the button shows up, you click the button, it jumps you forward 10 seconds into like the bridge of the song. It's like you're sitting with someone and like, no. Wait till you get to the good. Let's just get to the good part of the song. Then you'll be in.
Don't turn it off yet. You got to hear this part. I know it's a strange thing. That's the I find the viewing experience much worse on Amazon for this. It was better on Netflix.
Yeah.
Amazon Prime Video is like watching I hardly ever watch seasons on it. It's just not as good. Royo says, I vaguely remember Enterprise doing a plot line about how the Klingons looked the way they did in TOS and felt somewhat indifferent to it about it back in the day. Rewatching the episode in the middle of a pandemic has somehow made the episode more topical with the new panic over the Omicron variant. Seeing a Klingon scientist was definitely interesting. It reminded me of the Krogan warlord Dr. Okier from Mass Effect 2. They had a certain charisma to them that made you hang on to their words. It was also fascinating to see the total pressure they were under with millions of lives at stake, and it makes me wonder just what is going on within the medical labs of the world as COVID struck. As harsh and cruel as the Klingons are, they have a point when dealing with their pandemic the way that they do. So having Phlox be willing to let millions die again due to a disagreement of ethics didn't exactly give him the moral high ground. Again, 3 out of 5.
Yeah, there's got to be a conspiracy theory out there somewhere that the Chinese started COVID because they were trying to develop super soldiers based off of augmented DNA, augmented bad DNA. They were trying to create
the Batman DNA.
They were trying to create an army of half human, half bat hybrid super soldiers.
It's just it's interesting. I guess I didn't explicitly think COVID. The only time it made me think COVID was when the Klingons announced that they were trying to make this as a serum, but then it became aerosolized basically, and now it's spread through the air and they can't stop it from happening. That was the only connection. Did it strike you as kind of a COVID thing, or did you think about COVID?
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah, I did only because it's a virus that they're rushing to find a cure for, and they don't know where it came from. Blah 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 blah. So, just not so much other than just the tangential similarities.
Yeah,
I do have one other thing to say about streaming. This is just completely non sequitur.
Sure.
How is it that how long have we been streaming as a world culture? I guess it's like 10 years, right?
Yeah, probably.
How is it that there are still poorly functioning streaming apps? Like, I feel like this technology,
in sense of layout,
just functionality. I feel like they figured they cracked the nut on this one, and then for some reason it's like every company has to build their thing from the ground up or something, so they don't have.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's crazy to me that HBO Max or whatever works way worse than Netflix, and has these other ones have a.
What's your favorite streaming service in terms of functionality and ease of use?
I mean, Netflix is probably still the smoothest. I mean, it does what it's supposed to do every time.
I just like Netflix's layout too. Of the first line is things I've been watching, so I can go back into it. The second is my list, and then it gives me algorithmically generated choices after that about things that I might want to watch.
It seems like it's kind of simple, ultimately, but it's like every new one that pops up doesn't really work, or like on HBO Max, the thing that kills me is like, for whatever reason, the rewind doesn't work half the time.
Yeah,
and it drives me nuts. I actually don't mind Disney Plus. I think Disney Plus works pretty well, and Shudder. Shudder's got a good one too. I like Shudder's.
Well, those two are the opposite of what Amazon's problem is. Is that Amazon's Prime Video is reflective of what Amazon.com looks like. If you go to Amazon.com, it is a mess of stuff. They just have so much that it's like it's actually kind of remarkable that Amazon is as searchable and findable as it is when there's so much cobbled together. It's like you get stuff you don't even realize it's in there. If you go to like your account settings in Amazon, it's just endless pages of things that you can do to your account. Where Shudder and Disney Plus are pretty limited in their content. It's easier to curate what you're supposed to look at and what they want you to look at and stuff like that.
Yeah, Amazon is the recommended stuff tends to be pretty good. Like the stuff that they put like right at the bottom of whatever you're watching. But God help you if you search for anything on Amazon Prime. It's just, like you said, it's just a mess.
I had a weird thing too for an upcoming Patreon special. I have to buy the movie, and when I searched for it, we always run into this where you sometimes can't find the movie. It's like the link is wrong or something. I found an Ultra HD version for $7, right? But the HD version was $12. But I was sitting there going, can I watch the Ultra HD? Will it downscale it to 1080 if I can't watch it this way? But I didn't want to spend the money and waste it and be like, oh, I can't actually watch this thing, so I'll just get the other one. But it's that kind of thing where Amazon, there's so many options that you're just like, I don't even know if this is the right movie or the right selection that I'm supposed to be making.
Yeah, I don't think that they do this anymore. Maybe they still do, but I haven't noticed it in a while. But Amazon, there's a few times that drove me like nuts. When we first moved into our place, our internet wasn't that great. And so anytime we would rent a movie from Amazon, at this time, it would give you could rent it SD or HD, and SD was obviously cheaper. But, I got an HD TV, I got internet or whatever. You want to watch it in HD. So you rent the HD one, and then it gives you a thing that says, you can rent this, but if your internet can't support it, we're just going to stream it SD. And it's like, okay, so I'm paying $8 for the HD stream, but you're just going to give me the shitty one anyway. What are we? What are we doing here? Like,
they should stream $2 back into your wallet.
Yeah, I actually did complain once.
They just can't.
I did complain once, and I did get my money back. So,
yeah. Grappler John Zorn says with the final comment, Affliction. Clay might say this is a long way to go for a ham sandwich. I say, wow, Enterprise. You came a long way to bring me this oddly delicious ham sandwich I didn't ask for. I kind of love the fact that this episode takes a campy-ass swing at what has to be the stupidest canon complaints in the history of canon complaints. I also flat out prefer the Bee Gees-inspired Klingon design to any of the others, even if it's a little sad to see the Makos get their asses handed to them by the Gibb brothers. 4 out of 5.
I actually would not say that this is a long way to go for a ham sandwich, because I think the ham sandwich actually makes sense here. It's the
appropriate amount of distance to go. Yeah.
from the island in the kitchen to the counter in the kitchen. Perfect distance.
Makes you happy. Thank you, patrons, for leaving your thoughts. If this gets out and people are there, leave some patron thoughts if you're so interested. All right, so we're done. The patrons gave it all 3 out of 5s and a 4 out of 5. Clay, what are you going to give this one? Affliction, which we had a good discussion, I think, about. I think this is an interesting episode, if not a great episode of TV, or even a terrible episode of TV. But what are you going to give it?
Well, I'm going to deduct a point because no one in the episode was actually wearing Affliction T-shirts, which I think would have really been a new and exciting direction to go for Star Trek outfits. I think I'm actually going to give it a low 4.
Oh,
yeah,
wow. Okay.
Because, and again, this might just be them fooling me, but I think one of the things for me that made it so kind of almost fresh feeling is that everybody had something to do. It wasn't more or less. Everybody had something to do more or less.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the same 3 people doing stuff. They were mixing it up. They kind of kept things moving. They gave you some different...
Had an energy to it.
Yeah. You had some new stuff. You had some stuff they pulled out of thin air. It was just... There was a lot of stuff going on, and it was the kind of more modern kind of show that this hasn't been up to this point. That being said, not perfect, obviously, but I do think if I would say this is one would be one to watch, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, that's tough. I think I'll give it a 3. I'll just settle in the middle and not to be too cute about it. But I do like this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've given season 4 a lot of 3s, and I think that some of them are more interesting than others for a variety of reasons. I think this is one of the more interesting ones. It does sort of make me nervous about what the state of season 4 will be going forward, and like it really just highlights where the franchise goes after the series ends to me, which is kind of a negative on it. But it's a good, interesting mix of good and bad callbacks, like Section 31 and the Klingon stuff. It's this perfect little example of like how these things can go well and how these things can go poorly. I did love the energy of it. As you were saying, they were cutting before I got tired of a scene. They were cutting to a new scene because they had something else going on that they needed to see. I didn't get tired. I didn't feel like it was dragging down. It was all good. I think it's a competent episode of Enterprise for this season, so I'll give it a 3. And I think it's good. Cool. I enjoyed it. That's it. Thank you very much, patrons. Patreon.com/The Penske File. If you want to leave a couple dollars a month for us, it feels good for you. It feels good for us. It's much appreciated. It's the best way to support the show. So the next one is Divergence, I believe, is the next episode, which will wrap up this arc. And then we'll move on to the last standalone episode, which I think is called Bound.
Bound.
So, Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we go?
Bound, starring Gina Gershon and the hell is her name?
I don't get the reference.
Is that Jennifer Tilly? That's who it is.
It's no Affliction reference.
Bound. Yeah. Bound is the I don't know if they're witches, but it's a sort of a kinky BDSM kind of movie with
nice.
Jennifer Tilly and Gina Gershon, and it's the first movie the Wachowskis directed, I think, or the movie
Sure.
directly before The Matrix, anyway.
Yeah,
which I've actually never seen, but for some reason has stuck in my mind for no
I just think of
particular
Local
reasons.
H. Yeah, you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic. You're bound to the floor. Anyway, I was going to cut you off. Did you have anything you want to say before we're done? Or are we done?
Yeah, check out. We've got, as Wes said, we've got our last entry into the Friday the 13th series on Patreon this month. We'll be covering the 2009 remake of Friday the 13th, and then by the end of the month, I will have a patron poll up with some options as to what we should cover, what Amanda and I should cover for the next year's Rotten Horror Picture Show Patreon stuff. So if you have any suggestions or things you'd like to maybe see, please put them on our Discord where I can see them, and maybe the Rotten Horror Picture Show section. And the regular show goes on as it has been. Badass probably won't be back until after the new year, but thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Patreon.com/The Penske File if you want to support the show. And that's it. We'll be back with Divergence, and we only have a handful of Enterprise episodes left after this, Clay. I'm staring at the finish line, and it's getting very close to being another series in the can for us. So we'll see you next week with Divergence. Until then, have a good one.